the bottom of every slide so we don't have to go back. The first one is in case you want to be looking at the TE for the lesson that we're talking about, which is grade 3, module 5, lesson 1. It's a condensed version in a Word doc, in a Google Doc. And the other one is a Google Sheet for collaboration so people can work together to share the load for creating lessons. And we're going to talk more about that later. But we put the bit.ly there. If you go there and look at it right now, it's not going to make a lot of sense. So just hang on to that one. But it's there. At the end, we will send the link to this slide presentation to EdTech so that you will have this presentation is full of links to videos and all kinds of things. So you will have it there. So this is the lesson we're talking about today. Welcome to Fractions, grade 3, module 5, lesson 1. And this is the lesson objective. Partition a whole into equal parts, identify and count unit fractions using concrete models. And that's important because everything in the lesson should be focused on this. Yes, I knew I would forget something. Sorry. Back here. So the 3 things that we're going to look at are Seesaw, how you can make a lesson in Seesaw, how you can make a lesson out of recording the Zearn lessons, and how you can use the Eureka's Knowledge on the Go lessons or create your own in the same way. And most of the sections, the components, will include a small how-to video on some aspect of how to do these lessons. We spread them out through the presentation so we wouldn't just be doing them all at once. And all of the recordings of all of the stuff will be in a folder, which link will be shared with EdTech after. So for Fluency, this is what they're supposed to do for this lesson. Group counting by 4s and by 8s, and then, oh, imagine that, multiplication by 4s and by 8s. And it tells you how that they're going to do it. And this is the Zearn one. This one I'm going to show. Yes. I'm going to show you this one. I took the Zearn lesson and I recorded it, and it was screencastify. And as I'm recording it, I'm leaving directions to the students in it because they're not on Zearn. These are students who haven't used Zearn before. And so the best we can do is make a recording of the lesson and push it out. But of course, they can't click the buttons and they can't write stuff in it. And this may not be the best way to do Fluency, but I wanted to show you what it would look like. And I made a mess of the voiceover. It's certainly not perfect. So you can all be happy to know you will do better than this. Before we start, you're going to need a piece of paper and a pencil. On your piece of paper, make a place value chart with hundreds, tens, and ones. Press pause. Press pause while you make your place value chart. Press go when you get back.
Show 308 on the place value chart.
Pause and draw circles on your place value chart to show 308. Press go when you're done to check your work. Ready? Let's see. How'd you do?
Add 184.
Pause the video and add 184. Okay, so you get the general idea. If you're doing everything and you're telling them to stop so they can do it on their piece of paper or in their notes, and then you bring them back so they can check it. Very cumbersome, takes a long time to do the recording. We're going to talk about that later. The advantage of doing this is that maybe after a few lessons or 3 lessons like this, they will know how to do it in Zearn, and then you can just have them on Zearn. Another way, whoops, oh, that's right. Okay, so George is going to take this slide and explain about how he did the fluency for Seesaw.
All right, thank you, Kim. So what I did is, I've definitely have seen, some teachers, especially in the primary grades, really use Seesaw effectively when they want, when the teacher says something and the student repeats it. I could have done it that way, and that was one way I could have done fluency. But what I decided to do is I decided to use this with quizzes. And again, this activity is shared with all of you, so you can use it. And in quizzes, what I had, quizzes has, just like Seesaw, it's a platform that if you've never used, it allows you to create these little quizzes where the students kind of work on their own. And this is more about fluency. So I knew that the goal was to work and practice the fourths and the eighths in multiplication, because that'll be related to the fraction in the fractions later on in the lesson. So I went ahead and went to quizzes. I found you can create your own, or I found some that people had already created, and it was actually a fourth. It was a multiplication, just facts quiz on the multiplication of the fourths. So I went ahead and just added the eighths up to 10. So and what they do, if you've never used this, it's a little bit like Kahoot, except instead of timed, the student and they have to answer within a certain amount of time, the student gets to work at their own pace. So you can take a look at it. It was actually pretty simple. One of the things that I needed to also do is I know that in the lesson, it has them not only work on skip counting for 8, 12, 16, and so forth. It also has them take a look at how the relationship between the fourths and the eighths and the multiplication facts, how those, the relationship and the patterns that are happening there. So it has them, take a look at that and then discuss that or try to, identify the pattern on there so that they can start making those relationships and those connections. So what I did for that second part is this activity actually has 2 pages on here. As you can see here, this is page 1, where the students, what they do is they go to quizzes, they take the quiz. It won't take them more than a few minutes. And then at the end, they get a results page. They would take a screenshot and they would add that to the first page of the Seesaw template. And then on the second page, I actually have them, I have the same document that is in Seesaw that the teacher's supposed to do, where it has all the 4 facts and the 8 facts. And then it has them take a look at them and see if they can see a pattern. So the students, for that part of the fluency, is they write an explanation of what pattern they see. So it's it's a pretty simple activity. But I thought that this would also be something new for the kids. If you've never used quiz, it's a little bit like a game, and it's very engaging. So they enjoy that. So that's one way to get to use use fluency in Seesaw. And again, this is just one idea. I know there's some of my colleagues are doing some other amazing things on creating this type of work. So take a look at that, and hopefully it's helpful. So Kim, back to you.
Okay, so this is the Eureka lesson version. It's called Knowledge on the Go, and it's accessible on the very front page of the Great Minds site. Click on the link at the bottom of their first blurb, and it will take you to a list of grade levels, and each one of those will take you to the list of lessons. And just to reiterate, the lessons started at the place where the teachers who are presenting them what the topic that they're in. So they didn't go back and make lessons for all of the modules before that. And when you see how complicated it is to sometimes do these things, you
screen.
understand why that is. So that little camera is the video, and I'm just going to show it teeny tiny bit.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Fluency activities.
Skip through that.
28, 24, 20, 16, 12, 8, and 4. Thank you for counting with me.
Kim, we're not seeing your screen right now.
Uh-oh. Okay. How do I do that?
Isn't this her screen down on the side, Josh?
Wow.
Did you see it before when I did the Zearn one?
Yes, yes, we did, Kim. Can you try to resume your presenting?
Can you see that one? Okay, what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? Let's try this. Is still fit. Let's try that.
We're looking into it. There we go. I think you got it.
Okay. So now can you see that?
Perfect.
Okay.
Sorry,
so
folks, we're having a little bit of technical difficulty right now.
I'm
It
just
says,
getting used to
Kim,
this.
it says you're presenting, so try.
What did I do wrong? Let's try this. Is still fit. Let's try that.
We're looking into it.
Try Kim.
There we go.
There you go.
Okay.
I think you had maybe clicked off of what you meant.
So,
anyway, carry forward.
Now can
Kim.
you see that?
Yes, we can.
That is all way late. Very long delay. So what the teacher did here, and I'm going to show you how she actually does this little dot camera thing. She wrote down the numbers counting by 4 in order. They counted up with her. Then she started counting back. Then she's going to count up again faster and count backward again. And then she's going to work out a little pattern for them where they're going to underline all the 8s and then count up by 8s, and they can see that it's a pattern. It's every other one. It's twice the one they can see the pattern. The very next fluency activity, she has no break. She just goes right into this, where they're doing the multiplication by 4. And then she switches over to the multiplication by 8. And then again, she's going to draw their attention to the patterns that are inherent in doing this activity. Now, why would this have anything to do with the fraction lesson that's coming up? They're going to fold a piece of paper in half and then fold it again and get 4s, and then later cut it up and get 8. So it does show the multiplicative aspect of it, but it's also, they need to keep practicing their multiplication that they just stopped learning in 3rd grade. Okay, back to here. And I hope we're all good.
Looks good, Kim.
Okay, so this is how you can make a homemade dot camera. I only have an iPad, so the one on the far right is mine, rubber banded to the top of a box. But there are other, I think I like the ones with the grates the best. And obviously you would all probably use a smartphone. I just don't have one. Then you can record what you're doing and then push it out to the students through Seesaw or Classroom. Oh my gosh. How long
Hey,
have we been?
before we go to break, I want to, speaking of document cameras, we have had, I've double checked this with IT, we have had several teachers come into their classroom and get their document camera and take it home to attach to their computers. And then when they're sharing their screen in either a Screencastify or in a Google Meet, they can show the document camera because it's another window on the computer. So they don't have to make homemade ones. There's nothing that says they can't come and borrow their classroom doc cam and take it home for the duration of remote instruction.
Well, that's even better. Okay, so my trusty co-presenters over there, I'm hoping have the...
We do, Kim. We actually have, before we go on break, we have a couple of questions. One had to do, I think you'll be addressing it later on in the presentation, about using the Zearn videos and then translating them or voice over in Spanish and the legality of that and all that. But I know that's coming out later on. So you, for whoever who asked that question, is it Joan? Xochitl at Creekside. We will be talking about that later on in the lesson. So please be a little bit more patient with us on that. That's the only real question that came up besides a couple of comments about our technical difficulty, okay?
Okay.
So we'll take a short little break. I'm going to start the timer on here and we'll be back in about 10 minutes. Kim, you might want to mute yourself and stop sharing your screen.
Hello, everyone. And we are back. So I'm going to go ahead and answer a couple of the questions. So somebody replied after apparently I said, I talked to the IT director and you are allowed to take the cameras home, document cameras home. They replied, we were told we couldn't. I'm not sure when you were told that, but I talked to Mr. Villarreal this week, and you can go and just call your site or your principal and make sure the site is open. It should be. I'm not sure why it wouldn't be, and say that you want to come in to take your document camera home for the duration of remote instruction. In terms, somebody's asked, how do you connect it? I don't think we only use one model of document camera in the district. So that's going to vary just site by site or model by model. But again, that's a help ticket. Or I'm sure they probably go right into the projector now. So you're going to pull that out and it probably has a USB or a VGA, and you'll connect that to your MacBook Air. But again, for that sort of a hardware thing is an IT question. So somebody asked, not sure if I said laptop, about bringing home their desktop computer, which is surprising because I thought only our teachers had laptops. So the only piece of equipment I know of for certain that you are cleared through IT to take home is the document camera. You are, however, as far as I know, the classrooms have been cleaned and no one's been in them. So you can come in, and I don't know if you need to take home the desktop, but that's what Google Drive is for, is you could take those PowerPoints and put them in to Google Drive and then just access Google Drive at home, or, maybe make the leap and jump from PowerPoints over to Google Slides, because then it wouldn't matter what machine you were on, because Google Slides lives everywhere. Yeah, and then I think there were some questions about Eureka videos and such, so I'm going to let Kim go ahead and take over.
Okay, Kim. So the question that came up is, somebody would like to know if you could please once again show us where to get the Eureka videos. So don't forget to share your screen.
And turn on my microphone. Okay, so can we see Great Minds now?
Yes.
Okay, so you go to greatminds.org. And the very, very first thing they have up there now is Knowledge on the Go. So you don't even have to go hunting for it. Down here, you click Access Free Resources. This is the Knowledge on the Go section. And here you see all of the grade levels. So to get the lesson that we're doing today, if you want to see all of the videos, you can click on Grade 3, Eureka Math. We're on Module 5. No, wrong one. I've got 3s and 5s on my brain. Oh, yes, Module 5 is right. Module 5, Lesson 1. I was thinking that was great. Module 5, Lesson 1. Click on it right there. And it starts with, it will start with the whole concept development. And then at the end of the video, they'll put in the fluency, which is this. And they will put in the application problem. But we're going to show all of those to you. What I did to make this so that you could see it was I played it and I did the screencastify so that I could post it up in Drive and have it in my presentation. I can't think of any other way to get it to the students unless you give them this link, in which case I don't see why that's a problem either. You could just do it that way. But if you want to break it up, you're going to want to record the whole thing, and then I actually recorded it in pieces. I recorded one piece at a time, and then even in Screencastify, if you go to the editor, you can cut off the beginning parts that you don't want and cut off the ending parts that you don't want, and then post it up in Drive. You can even crop it so that all you see is the part of the screen that she's got there instead of your whole tab or your whole desktop. Alrighty. No, I don't have a how-to on that. I will make a how-to on that if someone reminds me in an email. And as long as we're here, because this might come up, how do you find the Zearn lessons? So here's Zearn. Go to this curriculum tab, pick your grade here, choose your mission here, and go. And here they are, lesson 1. We did Discovery Canyon. Then we're going to show you Math Chat. We're going to show you the Tower of Power. And when you click on them, up they come. And then I just did a screencastify of this tab because I wasn't going from tab to tab, put it up in the editor and cropped it right around the Discovery Canyon banner there so it would be nice and big on their computers. And then I cut off the beginnings I didn't like and the ends that I didn't like and put it up into Drive. I talk like I'm good at this. I'm not good at it yet, but I'm getting better. So closing all those and closing that. And oops, am I still presenting? Yes.
And one
Okay.
more question, Kim, and maybe Josh can kind of chime in on here too, if he wants to. But it had to do with if you are, voice over in Spanish to these videos, what, is that, when it comes to copyright, what is the implications there? So if you want to kind of chime in, and then Josh can chime in if he wants to.
Well, as I understand it, we're presenting these to our students as we would the regular Zearn stuff. And we could think of them, I'll talk about the Spanish in a minute. You could even consider these little training videos for the students because eventually life will be so much easier for you if you can get them on Zearn itself instead of having to push these out. So you can think of these as instructions to the students to get practice on using the product. And as I understand it, if we keep it within our district and not out to the whole world, then we're not using their product. We're not depriving them of any revenue.
So yes, as long as we keep anything that we need to modify, especially for things like we definitely need our resources in Spanish as well as in English. And if a vendor is not providing that, if we sort of remix or do a voiceover on that, and then we do not put it in a place that's public, here in EdTech, we have this very strong sharing ethic, but when it comes to fair use, and that's the legal argument for what we're talking about here, fair use by educators, if we keep it in the closed loop of our Google Classroom or our Seesaw Classroom, and it's not where other people can get to it and use it, then for the most part, we are in the clear. And I think we would be here because they don't already exist in Spanish.
So all I can tell, we will show you how to do the translation. I'll talk about that. There's a whole section on that. I don't know how you can have the product itself be in Spanish. I'll think about some kind of a workaround for that. But when I did the voiceover in English, I used the same process, which we will get to. So now we are on the application problem. And this is the application problem that is in the book. They're going to measure a book.
Did you go to percent mode, Kim? Sorry.
Oops, sorry. And later in part of it, they're going to measure at least 2 other items with their partner because they're going to, through that repetition of the same thing, they're going to notice that inches are bigger than centimeters. Alrighty? So there wasn't anything in Zearn that was an application problem. So we're going to go right to George, who's going to play a little bit of a student working on the activity.
All right, let me go ahead and take over the screen here.
Unless, George, you want to show them, talk about how you set up your lesson part.
I think I'll do that a little bit later on. So let me go ahead and share my screen on here. So one thing I want to let you know, again, I created an activity here. I'm actually going to go ahead and show it to you live because it's pretty, some of the things that you can do in Seesaw, are really cool. And like I said, I learned some of these things through watching what Ben Coswell does, Maricar, Elena Clemente, some of those people, you know, that are just doing some amazing work, and I adapted it. So one thing I want to say is, while we're doing a grade 3 lesson here, I hope that you are still engaged and looking at it, because we can learn from it. Just like I learned from Ben's kindergarten videos as to how I can apply in 3rd grade, you might see how, if you're a first grade teacher, how you can apply this in your grade level. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what this looks like. So here's the activity. And what I really like about the activity is that it actually has pieces on here for students to be able to edit and be able to move around. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what this looks like on here. So here is what the activity looks like for the students. You know, you saw what it looked like on Kim's screen on there, where they had a ruler. So look, I brought in a virtual ruler here. I had the same questions that are being asked of the students, and their goal was to, you know, to use this ruler here to measure, you know, I told them to measure the top of the book and the bottom of the book. And the top they would measure in inches, the bottom of the book they would measure in centimeters. And again, so they can kind of see how different units compare with each other as part of this concept development, as part of this application problem. So again, notice how you can kind of drag tools in and out. And this is just an image. This was just an image from the internet. You know, I found a ruler that I could use, and I just put it in here and dragged it. So later on, I will talk a little bit more about, you know, how this works and how this was created. But this is what it would look like, the concept development, and the students could go ahead and write here their answers with a text box, or with, you know, with the writing tools at the bottom. So again, this is just to get them to start thinking about this. And remember that the application problem, and Kim, please feel free to jump in at any time. The application problem is supposed to be something that students do on their own, and it shouldn't take more than, you know, I believe when you're in, you know, and you're in a classroom, I believe that if you go over 10 minutes, usually that's a long time on the application problem, at least in 6th grade.
I'm going to jump in for just a moment. If you look at the how to present the lessons, it has 3 ways to do the application problem. And at the beginning of a module, you can certainly model how to do it if it's a new thing. So this is really interesting, because yours is a really good example of, this is what it would look like for a student doing it on their own. And then later in the Eureka Math, in the Knowledge on the Go video, it shows the teacher modeling it. So you can see the comparison there.
And actually, Kim, one of the things I wanted to show you is that my activity here has a little how-to video, and I'm not going to play it, but this is meant for students to watch, because not only is it kind of telling them what they need to do in this activity, it actually shows them, it's a little embedded tutorial if they've never used some of these tools. And again, we're trying to do two things at once, but it's good if the student has never used this tool, that that you show them how to do that. And again, that was a pro tip from Ben Cogswell, who does these and now has kind of how-tos as he is kind of telling them what the task is that they need to do. So so take a look at that when you get a chance. They watch that, then they do the work. Over here on the right-hand side, and you're going to see this throughout the rest of our presentation here, is you want to see what student doing the work looks like. We actually have videos on here where and some of these Kim's playing the student. You won't hear very much audio, if any, except for the clicking, because this would be what it would look like for a student as they're doing the activity. So really good example on there. But again, I know that some of our students may not have a ruler at home. So I think, how can we create these tools, these virtual tools, these digital tools that they can use to get some of the same outcomes? Okay, back to you, Kim. Are you there, Kim? There we are.
They're still getting the hang of this. Okay. Can you see it?
Yes, we can. Present mode.
Okay, there we go. Make sure we can see it first. And so here's the Eureka version of this. And this is where the teacher is going through it step by step, because it's a new thing. And we will just see some little bits of it. Yes, I had way too much fun in iMovie.
I'm Mr. Moses, coming to you from Charlotte, North Carolina, where I was a teacher for 8 years. I now work for great minds, and I'm going to be working with you while schools are from grade 3, module 5, lesson 1. The materials we're going to need for today's application problem are the application problem pages, if you have them, or a blank sheet of paper will do, pencil. We're going to be using a ruler with both inches and centimeters. It's very possible you don't have a ruler with both inches and centimeters at home. That's okay. You can watch what I do on my camera and still do the mathematical thinking that we want to get through this application problem, and then 2 other things to measure with.
So I like how the way he, kind of reduced that anxiety as soon as he says, you need a ruler, and they're going, no, I don't have one. He says, it's okay, you can just watch me.
That ruler. If you don't have those items with you right now, please pause it.
Okay.
Application problem. Every day we're...
So these are the questions that they're going to have to ask. So he's letting them know ahead of time what it is they're looking for. And let's get to the actual doing of it.
Go along with me. Let's put that ruler down in this open section underneath A. And the first thing we're going to draw a representation of is an inch. I know that these are inches because my ruler says inch right here. I'm going to start by drawing my inch by making a mark at 0, and then another mark at 1, and drawing a line in between. If at any point I move too quickly, feel free to pause the video to catch up and then hit play again to keep rolling. Okay, so we just composed a unit called an inch. I'm going to go ahead and turn it into a rectangle so it looks like the tape diagrams we've been drawing all year. And I'm going to label this 1 inch because that rectangle is worth 1 inch. Now, this is a comparison type of problem. It says which is larger, which reminds me of the double tape diagrams we've been drawing since 1st grade. I'm going to keep that idea up, and I'm going to just draw a line to help us to line up the beginning points of those 2 representations we're going to draw. We drew our inch, now we're going to draw a centimeter. So flip that ruler over. I know it's centimeters because right here it says cm, which is an abbreviation for centimeters. I'm going to line this 0 up with that starting point I created with that line. And I'm going to mark where 1 centimeter comes to there. I'm going to draw and turn that into a rectangle. And that rectangle represents the unit called 1 centimeter. So by looking at our representations, we can easily see which is a larger unit in inches. So let's write that statement. An inch is a larger unit than a centimeter.
So while he was modeling this application problem, he took advantage of the opportunity to connect this back to things that they've been doing, back to tape diagrams, showed them where to find inch and centimeter on the ruler, modeled writing lesson, including using unit language while he's doing it. So they're getting the same thing all the time, and it's all becoming very familiar. And he will work through the whole application problem with them because it's the first one in the module. And then he measures. When he gets to the book, you'll notice that the book is longer than the 21 centimeters. And he talks about that. He said, well, I see it's 21, and it looks like there is a fractional unit. We're going to get to that later in this module. But for now, we're going to say it's about 21 centimeters. Because there he's measuring an actual book with a real ruler. He can't make it all nice and tidy and line up. There was the same problem with the inch thing. And then they did it again. There's his picture of his book. Did it again with 2 other items. Another book. And then he did it with a pen. Because after they do it 3 times, they're going to notice it gives them enough of a reference to talk about noticing that it always takes more centimeters than inches. And if you've only measured one thing, it might be a bit of a leap. But when you do it 3 times, you're going, oh, I see a pattern here. There are always more centimeters than inches. So even if you don't use these with your kids, I've just been learning a whole lot about how these things are presented to students, even in class, that I think they're really good videos just for Eureka Math in general. So back here, oops, didn't take that bit.ly link. Wow, that was fast. Concept development. So this is the biggie. This is the biggie one. It's the huge, ginormous, suck up all the time lesson. They're supposed to measure, they're supposed to take strips of paper and partition them into halves, and they're going to be using a ruler again. And then they're going to do the whole thing with the water, and you can't really send home the cups and the water. So now you have to get really creative for the concept development. The Zearn one, I'm not going to play it this time. I didn't do a voiceover, but you can see the whole thing, how they do it in Zearn. Going to describe it briefly. They take this strip of paper that they cut off of their notes, which you can send home the notes, but to actually cut it, they'd have to print it and then cut it. And they're using a certain size to make it, they're using 12 centimeters because 12 is a wonderful number for cutting into halves and quarters and thirds, which is what they want to do with it, which makes it hard for them to do at home if they don't happen to have that ruler. If they can't print out the notes, then someone's going to have to draw an exact sized strip of paper for them to be able to follow along and do this as he's doing it. He will show everything that they need to do, and then after he's finished showing it, it'll come up where it'll say, cut out your strip, come back when you're done, and then it will say, draw the lines, and he shows them how to draw the lines again, come back when you're done. Now you're going to fold it up, pause it, come back when you're done. Actually, they don't have to pause because see each one of these little blue dots down here? That's a place where the video stops all by itself. So the student stops, does it, and then presses go when they're done. They don't even have to do the stopping. And you don't need to see that whole thing because you can just watch it from when you get the slide deck. You can watch it from here, or you can watch it from Zearn like I showed you. And again, all I did to get this video was I just recorded it on Screencastify and cropped it in the editor. Then it could be pushed out to the students for them to do with the video. And it's George's turn. Oops. George.
Thank you. I apologize there. So I wanted to point you back to the concept development from the lesson that it's kind of broken up into 2 parts. And I didn't want to necessarily kind of throw too much on the students. Again, these are things that you're going to have to consider. It's how long of a video are you going to send out to the students? You know, how's their attention span going to work? So I ended up breaking this up, the concept development, into two different parts. So on day 1 of concept development, I'm going to go ahead and show you what that looks like, Hunter. So here's the activity that was created for day 1. And what I want to show you is I actually created, so this is where you as a teacher would do the direct instruction. And the students would watch this video, and just like Kim's presentation on here, I have, first of all, it's a very rough video, so I apologize. And I'm also not, a 3rd grade teacher, so perhaps I'm used to being a 6th grade teacher. My vocabulary as I'm explaining this might be, above 3rd grade level. So again, just as an example, but you are the expert if you're a 3rd grade teacher. So this is the video that they would watch, and it asked the students to pause and do this themselves on their document. So I'm going to go ahead and hit play a little bit. I'm not going to show you the whole thing, but I wanted you to see what this looks like. Can you hear that? So one thing that I'm noticing is that we are not, that you're not hearing the audio. So I need to, give me a second here for a second. All right. Let's play it again here. I apologize here. So you couldn't hear the audio, but I just wanted to let you know what this looks like here. Let's see if this will work better. You know, something that you can see, something that you can, you know, like a picture. So with that being said, once you click on this activity, there's a few things you'll need to understand. First of all, this activity has 4 pages here. So you can see it here on the right-hand side. You're watching this video, and that's good. What you will need to do is throughout this video, I will ask you to pause the video, and then you will need to go into your activity and use the tools to complete the activity. One more thing to remember for you as a reminder is if you forget what the instructions are for this activity, you can click on the view activity icon at the top, and then you will see the activities here. You will see the directions for the activity. Okay, so that's a reminder for you as to what you need to do. So with that being said, it says on here, you know, feel free to pause the video to start it over again if you need additional help. We'll fast forward it a little bit here so you can kind of see what this is looking like. You wrote on here that how long this strip was on, and when I measure here, we start at 0, it goes all the way to 12. So the answer is 12 inches long. So what you can do, so when I take a look at this, I'm going to go ahead and mark this at the 6-inch mark. So I'm going to go ahead and click, you know, do a line coming down here, just like that. And just know that this was pretty difficult because I was using a mouse. Our students have touch screens, which will make it a lot easier for them to write and make and, you know, annotate on top of these things. Now the question that I have for you is, how many equal parts have we split this paper into? Okay, go ahead and you may pause the video to complete your answer. So there we go there. Hopefully that, you know, gave you a little bit of an idea as to how, you know, what this looks like again. And then again, we show you an example of student work, what a student actually does, you know, what the student would actually do. And it's a good just explanation on there for you, just so you can get to see how this works. Again, this is if you're not familiar with it or if your students need to see examples of this. But yes, Ken, go ahead.
Can you show them the part that's on the next day? Did you put this next day on a different slide?
Yeah, it will be. So I'll show that in a little bit.
Okay.
How I start. Okay, so it's all yours, Ken. Back to you.
There, turn the mic back on.
Perfect.
Okay, so here's the Eureka version. In the instructions and in the Zearn one and in the Seesaw one, big thing with the whole ruler bit. And they're supposed to use a 12-inch piece of paper to do it. I don't know too many pieces laying around the house that are 12 inches on any side. So right there, we've got how am I going to get a 12-inch piece of paper if I'm going to do it for real? So Eureka decided the focus of this lesson is the fractions. It is not measuring. We are in the objective is not measure a strip of paper and cut it and, you know, mark it in certain places. The object of the lesson is to take a piece of paper and divide it into fractions. So when Eureka people did it, they said, forget the rulers. They might not have a ruler at home. They're not going to have a 12-inch piece of paper. Anything shorter than that isn't going to divide easily by 2 and 4 and 6, 2 and 4 and 3, unless they're only using centimeters, and then somebody has to draw this out to the right size. So they completely dispensed with the whole ruler bit. And I'm going to show it to you in Spanish. This is the English version. If you want to watch the English version, it's the whole piece. And you'll even see how they did the thing with the water. The person recording it recorded herself pouring the water so the kids could see it just like they would get to see it in class. And talking about the difference between a half of a strip of paper, which is the whole strip of paper, versus a half of the water that's in the glass, not half of the whole glass. Little distinction that they talked about there. But this is Anna's translation, and the way we did it is, see down here, this little thing, there's a link here to a video on how to transcribe a video using speech to text. What I did was I don't have a smartphone, so I couldn't do it with the smartphone, but I listened to the video in English on my laptop. Because it was coming from the laptop, speech to text was coming up with some bizarre words or nothing at all because it didn't sound like a real voice to it. So I did it, and I would repeat what she said, and then it would end up on the document. I then tidied it up, gave the document to Anna. She wrote it in Spanish, and then she recorded over the video. So she went to Eureka Math, turned on the lesson, started recording in Screencastify, but had the tab muted and turned on the captions so that she would know where they were in the lesson so she could say the Spanish at the right time. So we're going to take a look at that. And it's a shorty, if it likes me.
Bienvenido de nuevo. Aquí están mis 2 tiras de papel. Todo lo que hice para que entiendas es poner un papel de esta manera y cortar 2 tiras. Voy a poner una de estas tiras a un lado y solo nos vamos a fijar en esta tira.
So you see how they got around the whole 12 inches thing? She'd just take a piece of paper and cut off 2 strips right off the end.
Voy a doblarla en 2 partes. Cuando la doblo de esta manera y la abro, tengo 2 partes iguales. La unidad de fracción de 2 partes iguales se llama mitades. Quiero que imagines que tienes un compañero al lado tuyo y cuando yo te haga una pregunta vas a contestar en voz alta. Vamos a pensar qué fracción de esta parte entera de la tira es una de estas partes.
So the big new vocabulary word in this lesson is fractional unit. And when you get all involved with the ruler, a lot of the lesson becomes about how to use the ruler. When you dispense with the ruler, there's a lot more time here to talk about the vocabulary. And we have a new unit going on here. The whole thing, we've got halves. And over here we have 1/2 and 2/2. A lot more of the math stuff going on, the fractional vocabulary going on, instead of the measuring vocabulary going on.
¿Qué fracción de esta parte entera de la tira es una de estas partes? Díselo al compañero que tienes en voz alta. Y si pensaste que es una mitad, es un gran pensamiento, ya que cuando te dije que estas 2 partes eran mitades, entonces una es una mitad. Vamos a contarlas. Tenemos una mitad y tenemos dos mitades. ¿Cómo sabemos que son iguales? Estás pensando que si las medimos con una regla, podemos ver si las dos son de igual medida. Entonces podríamos decir que son iguales. También podemos doblarla y cuando las doblamos, si no hay nada que sobresale en esta parte, decimos que son iguales. Ahora vamos a doblarlas otra vez. Y ahora piensa, cuando abramos la tira de papel, ¿cuántas partes iguales va a haber?
So that was just a short piece of the lesson. They get the whole lesson done in about 20-25 minutes. And they have one section on the whole paper thing. First they do it in, in halves and quarters, and then they do thirds and sixths with all the folding, and they talk about how that's the same, and then they do the same thing with the water. And both parts go together. Of course, you could break them up and send them out on different days. But what I really liked about this is that we really got down to something that was as concrete as you could get without the kids actually being there. And we're already at another break and time for more questions.
So we have a couple of questions for I have one for you, Kim, and then we can try to answer the other one here from our department. But the first question has to do, it's from Miss Cardenas at Sanchez, and she wanted to know, can you create multiple classes in Zearn to differentiate for lower students?
That's a tricky question. Let me think. I think at this point you cannot, because they've got so many people all of a sudden signing up for Zearn, they can't handle more than one class per teacher at the moment. They are actually quite a small little outfit somewhere. And it's just they've suddenly gotten slammed with accounts popping up all over the place, which I think is really unfortunate for maybe 6th, 7th, 8th grade teachers who have multiple math classes and they can only have one. So at this time, you cannot. You can do it in Prodigy. You cannot do it in Zearn. I wish you could. Maybe they'll go back to that once we go back to being in classrooms.
All right, thanks, Kim. And the second question is maybe more of a group answer. So anybody who wants to chime in, that would be awesome. And this question is coming from Miss Healy at Fremont. The question is, does anybody know what tool Great Minds is using to make these videos that Kim is showing us? I think more specifically, how can I get my face, meaning her face, inside a little circle like that to work big?
I can chime in.
Does she know, she wants to know if Google Meet would work for that specific purpose. So anybody, feel free to chime in.
What I know about that device is I haven't gotten an answer yet. I have asked 3 times.
Which device?
The how are they getting? Because when you look at it, you see they've got all these little things that they click on around the edge of their presentation screen, and they've got the person in the circle which they can move around. And I have asked several times, what magic dot camera or whatever are you using to do these presentations? And I haven't gotten an answer. Sometimes I get another person, and then they said they're going to send it to the right place to get an answer, but I haven't gotten a response yet. I am going to stay on it.
Let's see if somebody else has an answer.
So I would say that if Miss Healy is married to the circle as a shape, then Camtasia is a screen recording device that works pretty well on Macs, and I think that they have free educator accounts and trial periods, and you can look into that. if you're not married to the circle as a shape, you can accomplish a lot of what they're doing there with Screencastify, making sure to embed your webcam. When you start the recording, you can change the size of the window, the size and the placement, even as you're moving through the recording of your embedded webcam. So there can be a little Miss Healy face in floating around the screen as she goes, and it has the drawing tools, the on-screen annotation tools, which might help with some of that.
I have a suggestion too, Molly. And again, we haven't done a training on this, but if you are familiar with iMovie, which is built into your into all of our, I mean, it's free and into all of our Macs, you can go ahead and record your screencast, you know, what you're doing, and then you can add your little face, like a video, like a little, think about picture-in-picture of your face talking, and the students can see your face. It can see your face as you are recording. So
That was on where?
that was in sorry, iMovie, and it's built into all. I might have misspoke earlier. That was an iMovie, and again, you can download it for free on your MacBooks. Pretty cool program.
But I'm going to say if you can get it done in something like Camtasia or some other like one-shot deal, go for it, because sometimes editing in iMovie can get tedious.
Any other questions?
There weren't so much any other questions. We got a couple of people chiming in about the Zearn question earlier, Kim. And so it looks like some people are recommending in terms of differentiating. One teacher mentioned that they have 2 different accounts with different grade levels. Some people are commenting that you can just go into an individual student. No, sorry. Some people are pointing out that like you have to have everybody on the same lesson. Is that correct, Kim?
Well, if you're using Zearn to teach your lesson, then it would be good if they were all on the same lesson. If you are using Zearn for practice and you're having kids catch up with what they've missed, to use it to kind of fill the holes, then you would want them on different places. However, even if they are all in the same class, you can go through and assign different topics, different starting points to each student. I think you can even go down the roster and click like 6 students and reassign their topic, and then another bunch of students and reassign their topic.
Right. And I think that was the idea in terms of like, if you're trying to differentiate, then you can do that you just described.
Right.
And so some teachers wrote in with those ideas just to share it for everybody else. But I think besides, sorry?
Actually, if you want to get really creative, when I have to do this, every time I make another how to get on Zearn presentation, I have to have a new account because I have to get new screenshots, and you can't get beginning screenshots again. So I probably have 4 accounts on Outlook now. I have Zearn 1, 2, 3, and 4 that are different teachers that I've had to create so I can do this every time they change their interface. So you could have 2 different teacher accounts, one from your official whole class one with your district email, and then maybe another one with a Yahoo email. And one is, this is the lesson that we're all on. And then another one for, this is the differentiation practice teacher, your intervention teacher, so that they have, you can assign different things. I don't know if students can belong to 2 classes at the same time. Somebody could try it and let us know. We do still have that wonderful little collaboration document that is growing by the day. So anything you have about this is what I tried with Zearn, this is what worked, those would be really good things to add for people.
So we all agreed to yes.
Awesome. So I think we're going to go to a break after this, if I'm correct. So I think George is going to start our timer for us, and we'll be back shortly.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. I think we're back. And I think Kim is going to get us started again. So Kim, if you can go ahead and share your screen, make sure you're unmuted, and we will get back to it.
So, and we're all here?
We are good.
All right. So, part of concept development is the problem set and the debrief, but I put them separate just because. So you want to be a problem set, you need to be able, it would be nice if you could assign exercises intentionally and in some kind of order that you, because you've picked questions that you want to compare the answers to in the debrief. We don't want them, even though they have all the time in the world, we don't want to assign them 2 hours of problem sets or they'll never go near it again. So this is the example of the pages that are in Eureka Math. And this is just what a description of the debrief is supposed to be. And the questions that are in that lesson as suggested possibilities. So if you like some of these, you would want to make sure that you included those particular problems in your must-do. That's a good one. How could we make a cup that showed thirds since we did one that showed halves? That's going to require some thought and maybe a good discussion. So here is the Seesaw Concept Development Day 2, which leads into the problem set. And George can take it away.
All right, Kim, let me go ahead and share my screen now. Okay, so as Kim said, I took a, and I said, as I said earlier, I took, I saw what the concept development was, and it was, so I broke it up into 2 parts. So this is what the activity looks like whenever, and this is just what I used to do. Again, it's just something that I used to do. When I used to work in 6th grade, I would always start usually my lesson with just a quick, usually 1 or 2 problem review of maybe what their homework was or what the exit ticket was on the previous day to take any questions or for, you know, to clear up misconceptions. So I start my video here. This one includes a video also with a review of what they were supposed to do on the previous activity, just to see if they got it right. So that's a little, that's why it says review here on this activity. And then we move on to the second part of the concept development. And what I wanted to show you on here, so this is what it looks like. You know, there's actually a video on this that has students kind of watch it, and then they can go ahead and you know, annotate or write over this document, and then they respond here. If you want to see what that looks like, remember that you can view a video of what the student's actually doing or what it looks like for a student by clicking on this video on this slide. But what I also wanted to let you know is, so I did the concept, you know, I went ahead and reviewed the work that was supposed to do yesterday. I went ahead into the concept, continuing the concept development about, you know, breaking up liquids into equal amounts and so forth. And then I attached to that the problem set. So as you can see here, here's the problem set on here. The students can go ahead and write all over it and annotate it and use the tools that they have to go ahead and respond on here. And the video does show them how, you know, again, this little tutorial in there as to how you use the different tools, the drag tool or the different writing tools at the bottom. And as you can see here again, here is part 1 of the problem set and part 2. And notice I did not include the whole problem set. Like Kim said, be strategic about what you want your students to be able to do. As she's explained, some of the problems, some of the examples sometimes the problem sets are more like extensions for students that you know, that need to be challenged more and so forth. So again, we're in different times. So I made the decision that I was not going to include the whole problem set. And just so you know, how did I get these in here? These are just simple screenshots that I took from the actual lesson. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what it actually looks like here. So here is the actual lesson from Eureka. I downloaded it. And look, I just took a screenshot here of each of these pieces. and just added them right into Seesaw on here, into 2 different pages, trying to give students as much work as possible, white space for them to be able to do what they need to. Even though one of the things that we may need to teach our students is, and I don't think we use it a lot, up here on the top left-hand side, there's a little plus button on here. If you click that, it allows you to zoom in, so the students can zoom in and move around and have more space to be able to write on, and then they can go ahead and zoom back when they're ready. So again, this is what it looks like. This, to me, when I think about SAMR and and being able to change the way that we integrate technology, this is probably the basics. It's just this is just substitution. That's what we do. Now, one thing that I did add in the lesson, I had this. Actually, that's later on. We'll talk about that in a little bit on the exit ticket. But pretty basic as to how this was created. And again, remember, you have a great shortcut on your Mac. Shift Command 4 here will get you to select what you want to take a picture of. So there we go. Takes a picture, and then you can go ahead and insert it right into the Seesaw activities. So not a lot of work, pretty quick to do that. So that's what that looks like on there again. And if you wanted to see what a student would do, I have actually created this video. Actually, Kim did this video acting as a student, and it shows you the process that they go through. So that is what this portion, and again, I call it concept development too, but it's really concept development and the problem set. Okay, so with that, we'll send it back to Kim.
So apparently I lost a slide. Before the Seesaw, there was supposed to be another Zearn one, which would have been the Tower of Power. So we'll just show you that real fast, the easy way. There, you got a review on that. So here is the Tower of Power, and they get just a little bit of practice on everything they did. I recorded it and recorded my voice over it, asking questions about this, asking them, how do you know how many? Think about how you know how many, what the fractional unit is, so they could pick that out. And as they go through this, you can take this just like a student. As you go through it, the tower gets filled up, and you just videotape this, screencast it for them, and give them time to think about which one they would do, so they can answer before you show them what the answer is. Okay, long way around that. So here is the Eureka one. And so for the problem set in Eureka, after they did the whole concept development.
Percent mode, Kim, please.
What?
Can you go in percent mode, please?
Sorry.
Okay.
So when they do the concept development on these Eureka videos, they go right into the problem set, and she assigns bits of the problem set, has the students circle which ones she wants them to do. I think that teacher actually sent the workbooks home with the students. You can push out the pages through Seesaw or through Classroom so they can write right on them. And then she goes into a debrief, and this is what the debrief looks like. Debrief is always something that we don't have time to get to, or when we do get to it, we're not quite sure what we're doing with it. At least I have a problem with this all the time. So here we go.
I want to talk about problem number 2. So go ahead and either look at your problem number 2 on your problem set, or the problem number 2 that's on the screen. And I want you to answer this question out loud. What happened to the size of the equal part when the string cheese was divided into more parts.
So she's not just checking the answers. They've got the answers there. Now she's having them think about the answers and what they can learn from what they did.
You may have noticed that when we divide into more parts, the parts themselves get smaller. So if you look at 1/3, it's a bigger piece of the string cheese than 1/6 or 1/4. Let's look at one other problem. Problem number 3C. Here's the rectangle I drew for number 3C to draw my fourths. The very first thing I did to draw fourths was I estimated where about half would be, and I drew a line there. Then I remembered the folding activity we did, and I drew another line here and here to give me fourths. So I used my 1/2 to give me fourths. I want you to try now to make eighths. Give it a try. I was thinking back to the relationships we thought about earlier. And if I have 4 pieces, how could I make them into 8 pieces? Just like we thought about with the thirds and the sixths, we thought either repeated addition or multiplication. Either way, we had 3 times 2 equals 6, or 3 plus 3 equals 6. We think about that with fourths and eighths. We can think the same thing. So I'm thinking we need to try to make 2 pieces in each of those 4 pieces. Let's try it like this. Let's count how many pieces we have now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We made eighths when we started with fourths. Let's think about one more thing. Problem 3C asks us to answer how many lines we drew. So let's count our lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So we drew 7 lines, but we made 8 pieces. So it's important to remember when you're drawing the fractions to think about how many pieces you need, not think about how many lines you're going to draw. We don't want to draw 8 lines because then we would wind up with 1 extra piece. Great learning today, 3rd graders. If your teacher asked you to complete your exit ticket, please pause the video and do that now.
So, so when they do these debriefs, you can see that they're taking a question that they can use to address some common misconceptions. I'm sure you have had students who, when you say, I want you to cut it into thirds, they draw 3 lines and they end up with fourths. So rather than just correcting an answer or a question, she's going through and addressing those things ahead of time, or maybe she knows that some of the kids might have messed it up and she can't see their work. So to get them to think about it and count their lines and count their spaces, she's giving them the chance to say, oh, that didn't work. I wonder why. And then she goes on with the explanation.
Kim, can I talk a little bit about debrief with Seesaw, only because I didn't include that as part of my activities?
Yes.
So let me share my screen really quickly. And this is a slide that you will have on your slide deck here. But what I did was, so how could you do the debrief? So these are options for you. You could do a debrief just where it's one way, where it's a one-way communication, where you just create a video using Seesaw to explain the same thing that you saw, the same thing, whatever problem you want to cover that could clear up some misconceptions. So that could be done within Seesaw. The other option is this might be a good time for you to have like a Google Meet where all your students are on there, so you could have a discussion. So you could use Google Meet as a way to have the debrief and the classroom discussion on there after they've turned in their work. And finally, Flipgrid is something that we are going to be working on after we get back from spring break. Some of you are already familiar with it and are doing some great things with it, but we are planning a professional development around Flipgrid so that you can have another option to show student thinking and for discussion. So look forward to that little advertisement for you. But yeah, I did not, in my activities, I did not create a separate activity for debrief. Instead, like I said, I would do one of these tools. And honestly, probably I would use Google Meet if I'm getting a good number of students that are coming in there. And remember, a Google Meet, you can always record it so that any student that comes in late, they can see it later. But I hope that, Kim, I hope that kind of, you wanted me to think about that, and I hope that was helpful.
Yes, I think it's the more options we have for doing debriefs or discussions to be able to talk about math is really important. So if anybody out there has some other ideas or have found other ways to use tools, please add them to our little collaboration document. Oh, and we're back, right? So
Yes.
there isn't anything in Zearn specific to exit tickets. The Tower of Power isn't really an exit ticket, although you can look at the results in your reports and see that a student needs work on something, which is the purpose of the exit ticket. So the Tower of Power doubles as a problem set and an exit ticket thing when they are doing it in their own account. So you can get those reports. And there wasn't a debrief with the Zearn one because you need to have people together to talk to really do it. But we do have an example from Seesaw here. So George, it's your turn again.
Back to me here. So again, I created an activity for this, and what I wanted to do on this activity is it has two parts to it. So I'm going to go ahead and actually show what it looks like. Of course, it's a video, again, showing students what they need to do and giving it some direction if they've never, because they may have never used, if you take a look on it, they may have never used the microphone tool to record their thinking. So actually, my little tutorial there shows them what the process is if they're trying to use a microphone. So once they get into that, into the activity and a student opens it up, this is what it looks like. And what this activity asks the students to do, number one, is it asks them to complete the work, these 3 problems on here, and then they use the microphone here, the microphone tool here, to record their explanation for problem number 3, and it gives them that direction in the video that they watch. It gives them direction to solve the problem, and once they're done with that, I want them to use their voice to talk like a mathematician and explain the response to number 3 and how they reach that response. So again, this will give you an idea as to their understanding, misconceptions, and so forth. But I thought that adding the voice from each student and accountability would be helpful. So that is part of this activity for them, is to explain with the microphone their thinking and how they reach that. So again, I just wanted to give them more than just simply a piece of paper that is just a substitution for what they would get in the classroom. I want them to actually use use their voice, which we don't have in front of them, so they wouldn't be able to do that. But with this tool, they can record it. They can record their thinking here. So that's another way to do that with regard to the exit ticket.
Okay, I'm going to come back here because I just saw the time. And of course, the most important bits are always at the end, right? So that looked like a lot of work, didn't it? In fact, George kept track of how long it took him to make these things.
I'll talk about that. I'll talk about this, Kim. Yes, it did take a lot of work. I wanted to let you know that I took one lesson here and I created 5 different activities here. If you actually want to see me creating, I believe it's the one of the application problems. If you actually want to see, yes, thank you, Kim, for continuing to present. Can you put it in present mode? So what I wanted you to realize on here is, first of all, I would consider myself pretty good with technology. I'm pretty tech savvy, and to create this, which I would consider 2 days worth of instruction for one lesson, so this would be 2 days worth of instruction, it took me about 6 to 7 hours. So that is the reality of where we live. It takes a lot longer. We have to be a lot more thoughtful about it. Now, what I do want you to know is that I am not an expert in third grade curriculum. So I think, some of you that are maybe experts in the third grade curriculum and maybe not so good with technology, I feel like that balances out kind of what I did. I don't know the scope and sequence of third grade. I had to actually teach myself and learn it. So that was part of my 7 hours learning how this built on each other, what came first, what comes next, so I can plan this strategically. But I did want all of you as teachers and, administrators that are hopefully watching this to understand, the work that it takes to do this kind of teaching. And again, watch this video on here, because I believe it's about 20 minutes that it took me to create this. And I know that if I was to do this again, in fact, when I created this video, it went a lot faster, because just like anything, the more you do it, the easier it gets, and you learn from that and find ways to speed up the process and shortcuts and so forth. So it definitely took me less time, and I know that if I was to do this again, it would take even less time. But I since we're all starting here, we're all growing on here, I think it's important that we remember that, that it takes a lot more time to plan these kinds of lessons. Kim?
Yes. Okay, so just 2 more slides. This one's quick. Considerations when making your lessons. Remember what the objective is. If there's something in the lesson that is not necessary to understanding the learning target, and it's going to be a pain to do at home, see if there's another way to present what needs to be presented without having to do the whole ruler and the centimeters and all that kind of stuff, which might have been too difficult for some of the families to get. And just folding the paper will get you what you want. The other thing is, let's try to share the load. When Eureka was putting together those videos, they have three or four different teachers working on that, on each lesson. Each one is doing their own piece of it, and then they put it together. So if you watch the whole thing, you saw that there were different teachers. That was all from the same lesson. So I have created here, I don't think that's a link to it, but this bit.ly link down here at the bottom is a link to it. There is a, you now have a Google Sheets collaboration tool where you can put in the lesson you're on. Let's see, I'm supposed to know how to get this bigger now. Well, I'm not too good at that. Lesson, name, and school. The reason I put lesson first was so that you can go up here and do sort by column A all the way down, and it would put them in order from the oldest lesson to the newest lesson. And if everybody uses the same format, which I'm going to put up in here as soon as we're done, then it will sort alphabetically and then put everything in order for you. Then you can see which people are doing lessons that are close to you. Maybe get together and say, well, first you want to talk about what the lesson is supposed to be about and how can you take things that would be difficult to do virtually that are in the lesson, brainstorm ways around it, and then parcel out the work. You could either parcel it by everybody gets a different component. You could say, okay, we got 5 lessons to do or 4 lessons to do or however many. I'll do this lesson, you do that lesson, you do that lesson, and then we'll have 5 lessons that we can all share. Or you can say, I really like Seesaw. I see Seesaw as being a way to do this part on this lesson and this part on this lesson. And someone else says, oh my gosh, you go do those. I'm not really good at Seesaw, but I've got a dot camera and I can do actual working on the stuff right there and take the videos. So the trade-off is you have less of a lesson to do yourself, but in exchange, you're going to have to probably spend more time collaborating, especially the first time you do it. But it's an idea. The more you can divide up the work, the less you are spending per lesson yourself.
Yeah, Kim, just a couple of things. As Kim said, she's going to work on adding the instructions on there, and she's also going to change the settings to anybody and Alisal can edit. So when you get a chance there, Kim.
I did that.
Yeah, well, Sally just went in there and it still says it. Yeah, but
well,
and I think that's a good point, Kim, on there. If you saw that I created from one lesson 500 activities, it's like, work with your team, work with your grade level, or even across grade levels. Now that we have this technology on leveraging that, because it's too much for one person to do. So let's work together. I couldn't agree more, Kim. I did want to share, Kim, if we have any additional questions, we're going to answer those, which so far I don't see any. So this is kind of your last opportunity to ask any questions. And then we're going to pass it on to Josh because he's going to close up. Kim also is showing you, if you want this whole presentation, this is the bit.ly that you can use to get this whole presentation, and we'll make sure it gets to you through the email. So Kim, unless you want to say something, I'm going to hand it over to Josh.
I'm good. Okay, let's get that.
All right, everybody. We are happy to have presented this for you. I guess we were out of practice after 4 days of not live streaming. Sorry for all the technical difficulties. And once again, as we say at the end of every live stream, this is new for all of us. And even if it doesn't feel brand new anymore, it's still, compared to the time you've been teaching. So remember to be good to yourself, be good to each other, and please be good to our kids. Thank you. Have a great rest of your day, and have a great spring break. We'll see you when everyone comes back.